It's been said that most people die at age 25 and wait to be buried at age 65. So the big question is this: how are entrepreneurs like us who believe in God and read the Bible preparing for the financial danger that the bankers and brokers do not want us to know about? How do we resist a life that's less than we are promised and hold on to our dreams so that we can live in fullness every day? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the secret. My name is Nate Scott, and welcome to the Life is Rich podcast.
Hello, this is Nate Scott, author of Life is Rich, How to Create Lasting Wealth, and welcome to the Life is Rich podcast. In today's Life is Rich podcast, I'm going to share how to become a line crosser. I believe that everyone is waiting for something. Men and women are waiting for relationships, for children, for healing, for a home, for a job, or for a financial breakthrough. Stories of God's children waiting for these very same things are woven throughout the Bible. If you want to understand your own waiting in a way that preaches the gospel to yourself and to the watching world, then the Life is Rich podcast is for you. My personal mission is to live each day principle-centered, based on biblical teachings, and to be a person of value and positive influence. I use the Socratic method of teaching to teach how to think versus what to think. One of the most important things I want you to learn from the Life is Rich podcast is that success is an irrevocable and unwavering truism. If you follow this truism and the concepts it encompasses, you will succeed. If you don't, you might still succeed, but it may take you a lot longer and require a whole lot of luck. By the way, if you're unfamiliar with the term truism, it means something is as sure as anything gets in the world. For example, if your parents had no children, it is a truism that you won't either. That's not to say that people are destined to fail if they are never exposed to the Life is Rich message. On the contrary, most people have everything they need to take them out of darkness and into the light of success. Everything, that is, except that little push at the right time. You can take two people who seem to be equally qualified in most things. One gets the push and has success, and the other has a comfortable but relatively unsuccessful life. Often, there's only a fine line separating the two in their degrees of success. For example, Tyrone Power was the leading man in a movie called The Razor's Edge. His stand-in was Thomas Noonan, Power's friend and old high school buddy. They were about the same size, good-looking, and very capable actors. The big difference between them was salary. The combined salaries for the major stars in the picture was almost $500,000, of which Power received the lion's share. The combined salaries for all the stand-ins was less than $10,000. Power was not that much better in his acting than Noonan, and in fact could not have made the movie without him. The difference was only a fine line between them, but Power received roughly 75 times the compensation. Let me tell you why the .350 batter gets the big bucks. In Major League Baseball, a .350 hitter gets a multi-million-dollar contract because he's a good hitter. But how good is he compared to his teammates? A .250 hitter may have to sign for a couple of $100,000 or be sent down to the minor leagues. What's the difference between these two? The .350 hitter gets on base 3.5 times in 10 trips to the plate. The .250 batter gets there 2.5 times. The big contract guy is successful only one more time in 10 tries than his teammate. And he may not even be a better hitter. The other player may actually hit better but run slower. There are enough close plays at first base to indicate the better man may be only a half step faster once in 10 tries. That's a fine line. In a 165 game season, especially when you factor in injuries, batting rotations, and so forth. Have you ever heard about the critical 10%? Often, the difference in life is a measly 10%. If you're 5 feet 10 inches tall or about 70 inches like me, you're fairly typical height. Reduce that by 10% and you end up 63 inches or 5'3". Add 10% and you become a giant at 6'4" inches. Comparable changes can take place when you add 10% to your diligence, perseverance, or enthusiasm levels. The result produces a gigantic effort or a mediocre one. The point is, 10% just ain't much. It's hardly enough to tell the difference between a 40-foot sloop and a 36-foot sailboat until you get the sails up in a stiff wind. The key is not to fly too low. Too often, people approach success like the pilot of a plane who flies just high enough to miss the treetops. With just a little more effort, a little more determination, you not only miss the trees, but you might even get high enough to see what's over the horizon. The man who defeated Napoleon, the Duke of Wellington, once commented that British soldiers weren't any braver than French soldiers. They were only brave for 5 minutes longer, and that's all it took for the English to defeat the best army in Europe. Are you straddling the line? What does all this have to do with you? I suspect that most of you listening are operating somewhere around 60% of your real capacity for success. Many of you are people with talent and some determination, but you still haven't made the big leagues. You look at that 350 batter and say, hey, she's not that much better than I am. And you're right. She's not that much better than you are. She just had the determination to try harder to get good at what she does. Let me ask you a question, and please be honest. Do you want to cross that line and get in the game? Then do it. Make the effort, but don't try to stop on the line. You have to be on one side or the other. You can't be a mugwump with success. You can't sit there with your mug hanging over one side and your wump hanging over the other. It just doesn't work that way. Either you're in the game or you're in the crowd watching the game. You can't be on the field unless you're a player. There's no straddling the line. So become a line crosser. By now, you've probably figured out that the Life is Rich podcast is designed for the line crossers of the world. That's what a Life is Rich soldier is. A 7-figure Christian entrepreneur. Living in fullness every day because they realize that they are Christ's heir. Spiritually, mentally, emotionally, relationally, physically, and financially. If only a fine line separates a successful person from failure, it stands to reason that the line can be crossed, right? Of course it does. Before you can become a crosser, though, you have to learn how. Hitting a baseball looks easy, but if you've never tried it before, and if there's no one to show you how, it can be a lot more difficult. If you don't believe me, go down to the local batting cage and set the machine on the highest speed. It's not impossible, but it seems like it is at first. It's not really all that difficult. It's just different. It takes a different kind of thinking than driving a car or shooting a basketball, for example. The key to success is simple. If you understand the rules and follow them, you will succeed. If you don't try, then you will allow yourself to avoid success. You will stay a Thomas Noonan all of your life instead of crossing the line to become Tyrone Power. But you don't have to. If you want to badly enough, you can learn the rules of success. The Life is Rich podcast is going to give you the push you need. I will outline the rules and explain how things work. I will teach you how to think versus what to think. Just remember, the rules are only words if you don't use them. And you have to do that for yourself if you want to be on the successful side of the line.
Thank you for listening to the Life is Rich podcast. I'm your host, Nate Scott. Remember, if I tell you, you'll forget. If I teach you, you'll remember. But if I involve you, you'll learn. One way to get involved is to rate, subscribe, and leave feedback on iTunes by answering the question, what did you like best about what you heard? One of the problems faced by Christian entrepreneurs striving for success is having an alliance with like-minded people working together for a common, definite objective. Would you like to join a community of Life is Rich soldiers? If so, please rate and subscribe to the Life is Rich podcast on iTunes and text GROWTH to 904-204-0846 for the link and this month's free book. Again, please rate and subscribe to the Life is Rich podcast and text GROWTH to 904-204-0846. Again, my name is Nate Scott. Take care and be blessed.